Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 207 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian military continues to make progress on the ground as Russia loses another key city. Ukraine has fully captured the city of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv Oblast. As the Pentagon says, NASAM air defense systems will be delivered soon. So when we go on the military map on deepstatemap.live, this is the city of Kupiansk, and you can probably already tell that from its location, this was a major transportation hub for both road and rail, so it's critical that Ukraine got this city in order to cut off Russian supply lines for forces in the Donbas region. And what Russia really wanted was for this river, the Oskil River, to become a nice natural barrier that they could retreat behind and then hopefully stop the Ukrainians from crossing. This plan has already failed as the Ukrainians have successfully established a bridgehead and they're currently moving men and equipment to the other side of the river. However, a lightning strike advance into the Luhansk Oblast probably isn't happening anytime soon, and the reason why is because they need to first soften up the area and take out strategic targets with their HIMARS launchers. You'll notice that this white line right here is another rail line supplying Russian troops in the Donbas region, so Ukraine needs to cut that off. So forces are being resupplied from Russia, from the city of Velyky, and it goes through this city of Troitsky. So if we get out the ruler and just see how far was this prior to 2 weeks ago, this was 106 kilometers, well outside any artillery or HIMARS striking range. But because the Ukrainians successfully made it to this city of Kupiansk, we can now see how far is this supply line, and now it's only 54 kilometers. This is within HIMARS striking distance, so what the Ukrainians need to do is get HIMARS launchers close to this city and then start taking out priority 1 targets. This would be command posts, radar installations, fuel warehouses, ammunition depots, any supply lines critical for the Russian forces to continue fighting in the Donbas region. Ukrainian forces can now also start striking into this city of Velyky. You'll notice if they get maybe a launcher to this road up here, this is now only 53 kilometers, well within HIMARS striking range if that's what they want to do. And somehow, I'm not sure, but Ukraine has been very effective and able to advance across the Severodonetsk River. For almost 4 or 5 months, this was the natural barrier holding back Russian soldiers. So if we just skip backwards on the timeline to perhaps September 12th, you can see that this river was the front line. And with the success of the counteroffensive in the Kharkiv region, somehow the Ukrainian forces have successfully crossed this river and are pushing the Russian forces back. When we go to the map today, it says that Russia is still in control of the city of Lyman, but I'm already hearing reports that the Russians have withdrawn from this city. Absolutely incredible that they have maintained this momentum. The Ukrainians want to get to this major road here that leads to the city of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. This would be a huge morale win for the Ukrainian forces if they could retake these towns. So here's the scorecard. For people who support Russia online, they're always talking about how the Russian military is still advancing every day, even if they're advancing slow. So this pink territory is what the Russians occupied 5 months ago, and the progress that the Russian military has made on the ground has been marked in this magenta color. So this magenta color is what the Russian ground forces have achieved over the last 5 months. Meanwhile, on this side, you'll notice the color blue. This is what the Ukrainians have achieved just in the last 2 weeks. So for anyone who wants to keep score of this war by territory taken on the ground, it's indisputable at this point that the Ukrainian forces are winning. Here's a nice touch from President Zelensky. He had guests visiting him from the European Union, and he served them watermelon from a village that was liberated in the Kherson region. There's a nice little note here if you want to pause and read it. But it just makes the war more tangible and feel more real when you're visiting a country at war and they're literally serving you food for your belly from a town that was recently liberated thanks to the donations and support being given from NATO countries, being given from the West. So that's the good news. We're now going to talk about the bad news. And we're going to talk about genocide and war crimes and crimes against humanity because Russia is exposing itself as one of the most horrible, evil societies, countries in the world. Over 400 bodies were found in a mass grave in Ukraine's city of Izium after the Russian military fled. And I've watched the videos, I've seen the bodies. It is highly upsetting, highly disturbing. I'll link these videos down below if you want to go on social media and see them for yourself. I obviously can't play them for YouTube, but my heart and my sympathy and my gratitude goes towards these workers willing to exhume the bodies, identify them, notify next of kin, and then give them proper last rites and respects. And there's no other word to describe what Russia is doing other than genocide. Russia is killing women and children. They're killing elderly people. These bodies showed signs of torture and mutilation and rape and abuse. Bodies were buried with their hands still bound behind their backs, bullet wounds in the back of the head. Russia is systematically killing anyone who identifies as Ukrainian. If you view Ukraine as a national identity or an ethnic identity, you are a target for execution by the Russians. That is the textbook definition of what genocide is. Additionally, there's lots of people coming forward telling their stories. We have pictures and videos of Russian torture chambers where civilians were brought to be, once again, tortured, raped, abused, beaten. And this is all Russia's plan to break the spirit of the Ukrainian people and have them permanently submit to Russian rule. Once again, people coming forward, identifying these locations, giving their stories of what happened to them. Russian forces left behind their torturing equipment. Electrocution was very common. Here is an international observer in one of these Russian torture chambers explaining how it was used. This clip is about 1 minute long.
Так, зараз ми перебуваємо, це катівня в місті Ізюм. Звертаю вашу увагу, це невелике приміщення, підвал, росіяни завжди використовують підвал. На полу спеціально розстілений такий лінолеум, який дуже легко миється, щоб не залишали сліди крові. У нас є свідчення багатьох людей, що саме тут перебували допроси, тут сидів представник Російської Федерації, який все фіксував, записував, а інші в цей час вибивали якісь свідчення і намагання, щоб людина або пішла на співпрацю, або взяла на себе шпигунство на користь Збройних сил України. Тому вкотре я хочу, щоб весь світ подивився на ці умови, на порушення Женевської конвенції Російської Федерації, щоб всі зрозуміли, Україна воює з державою-терористом. І перемогти ми можемо тільки разом. Будьте з Україною, допомагайте всьому світу перемогти ворога Російської Федерації.
The world has to see these pictures and videos. The world has to be known, has to be made aware of these stories. Russia has to be stopped. And it's important to also talk about Russian history. On September 17th, 1939, Moscow joined the German invasion of Poland in line with the terms of the Nazi-Kremlin Pact, Putin's Russia has criminalized all mention of Moscow's shameful alliance, shameful history with the German Nazis. And here's the statement for the Soviet justification for invading Poland. And I just want to read a couple sentences for you. And this is what the Soviets wrote to the Polish ambassador in Moscow. And they said, Warsaw no longer exists as the capital of Poland. The Polish government has disintegrated and no longer shows any signs of life. This means that the Polish state and its government have, in fact, ceased to exist. And this has been Russia's objective this entire war, to get the Ukrainian government to collapse or flee, to claim Ukraine doesn't exist anymore. The Soviet Union in 1939 made historical claims saying there are Russian minorities in this territory that need protecting, so we have to invade Poland. This country is not stable. This territory used to belong to Russia. It's okay for our military to go in there and take this territory. So it's important that we don't let Russia bleach their own history, and the rest of the world remembers what the Kremlin did 75 years ago. And there are no people in the world that understand fascism and oppression and danger more than the Jewish people. And here's an article from the Times of Israel saying Moscow's chief rabbi lives in exile after refusing to back Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Let me read the first two paragraphs here. As the head of a large European rabbi group, Pinchas Goldschmidt regularly travels in and out of Moscow, where he has worked as the city's chief rabbi since 1993. But when he left most recently, 2 weeks after Russia invaded neighboring Ukraine, he did so without a firm plan to return. And now he is officially working in exile after coming under pressure from the Russian authorities to support the war. So this is Russia's highest ranking or chief rabbi, and 2 weeks into the war he had to flee Russia because he saw what was coming. Vladimir Putin was putting pressure on him to put out statements supporting the invasion of Ukraine, and he refused to do so. Instead, he chose exile because he didn't want to be thrown out a window. Here is Rabbi Goldschmidt giving an interview to DW News. This clip is about 1 minute long, and I think it's important that people watch it.
I'm concerned about the future of the Jewish community in Russia, and I'm not the only one concerned. Thousands and tens of thousands of Jews have left the country since the beginning of the invasion.
A prominent politician, former minister, Nathan Sharansky, who was, as you know, a dissident who was jailed in the Soviet Union, a refusenik as they were called at the time, he says that if Jews have the chance to get out of Russia, they should take it. They should go. Do you support that view?
Yes, I support this view, and for many reasons. And the many reasons why Jews today are concerned about the future in Russia, it is A, the rise in anti-Semitism, B, the possibility of a closing of the Iron Curtain, that it is going to be impossible to leave. Number 3 are the harder hitting sanctions which are going to damage the economy long term. And number 4, the possibility that there's going to be a general draft for the army. And number 5 is the widening repression of civil society.
So here is a summary of the rabbi's points why you should get out of Russia now if you can. One is the rise of anti-Semitism in Russia. This applies to any ethnic or religious minorities, as the Eastern Orthodox Church of Russia has been weaponized by President Putin. So this is Patriarch Kirill, the Patriarch of Moscow, the highest ranking member of the Eastern Orthodox Church. And he's a former KGB agent. So Patriarch Kirill and President Putin are close friends and have been working together for the last 20 years to integrate civil society in Russia with the Eastern Orthodox Church, to the benefit of Vladimir Putin. For decades now, Kirill has been hailing Putin as this almost Messiah-level character, a savior of Russia that is going to lead them into a new glorious era. Patriarch Kirill supports the war in Ukraine and is in favor of killing as many Ukrainians as possible. This is the highest-ranking Eastern Orthodox Church member in the country. Russia could also at any point close their borders and make it impossible for people to leave. In fact, Russia could just become a larger version of North Korea where no people get in or out, no information gets in or out, and it just becomes a closed society. Number 3 is that sanctions are destroying the Russian economy anyways. If you want a better life for yourself and a better life for your children, you're better off moving to a different country at this point, as economically things are only going to get worse for Russia as time goes on. Number 4 is at any point Russia could choose to mobilize their population and just draft everyone. And if you thought this war was brutal for Russian soldiers on the ground, now it's going to look a lot worse a year from now when the Russian military is in fact out of everything, all proper equipment and supplies and vehicles, and they're still sending their soldiers into war to die. Number 5 is the general oppression of civil society in Russia. There is no freedom of speech, there is no freedom of press, there is no true representative government representing the people. Russia, in fact, is just a kleptocracy to serve the wants of a billionaire class living in Moscow or St. Petersburg. So if you can get out of Russia, it's in your best interest to do so as soon as possible. Here are some interesting statistics and polling data that I want to share with you, because for the first time ever, Britons think that Ukraine is now winning the war rather than Russia. So they do this poll every couple weeks or every month or so, and you could see that at the beginning of the war in March, maybe about 55% of British people thought Russia had the advantage, that Russia was going to win this war. A very small percentage thought Ukraine was going to win. But with the recent success of the Kharkiv Counter Offensive, these numbers have flipped, 31 and 14, with 36% maybe being undecided. I'm sure if you did public opinion polls similar to this in other country, you would see similar data of perception on the ground changing. And perception is everything. The belief that you can win is necessary in order for you to win. So even if Ukrainians have always felt this way, it's important for their Western allies and people supplying aid and equipment to also believe that the Ukrainians are going to win this war. Here's another interesting statistic. 73% of Americans are now in favor of giving Ukraine NATO membership. And 4 in 10 Americans are now willing to send U.S. troops to defend Ukraine. This number only starts getting significant when it's 51% or higher. American politicians pay very close attention to public opinion polling, especially when it relates to military members. But the fact that this is already at 40%, 7 months into this conflict, as a veteran myself, I think this is a very interesting number if it continues going higher. The next news story you should be aware of is that Germany seizes Russian oil firm Rosneft's refineries. A couple weeks ago, gas officially stopped flowing through the Nord Stream pipeline from Russia to Germany. This will greatly impact the German economy and the European economy. But this is a pretty bold move by the German government to seize and nationalize these Russian assets. Rosneft's German subsidiaries are now being placed under trusteeship to counter the threat to the security of energy supplies. So Germany has nationalized billions of dollars worth of Russian assets inside Germany. So what this means is that there are now lots of legal complications to ever getting that gas flowing again from Russia to Germany. For people optimistic that this war can suddenly end and then we can go back to business as normal, I think this is a signal from Germany that they're not going back to business as normal. Even if the conflict somehow magically ended, I don't think that gas is going to be turned back on for years, as there are now legal complications and legal disputes that have to be resolved before any more gas for cash payments resume between Russia and Germany. Next video I want to share is a feel-good one, I promise, of a Ukrainian defender celebrating his daughter's maybe 3rd birthday. He wasn't able to be there with her, so he decided to just make a TikTok in order to wish her happy birthday. That's pretty adorable. I hope he stays safe, and I hope he's home for her next birthday. Final clip I want to share with you is of French and American volunteers who have gone to Ukraine to fight. They were part of the Kharkiv Counter Offensive, and they walked into this village to liberate these people, and civilians came forward to welcome them and were surprised that these were not Ukrainians speaking Ukrainian or Russian. These are American and French volunteers fighting for Ukraine. And this is just a general nice interaction between these local people who have just been liberated.
English. Нет русский. Сколько они нас набыло, тортила, комендантский час, бежи.
Щоб всі живі, щоб всі до мами повернулися. Щоб всі до мами. У мене сын той в Харькове. Ребята, только живы не оставайтесь, ради Бога, самое главное. Щоб мамки ваши не плакали.
Добрый.
Рідні, щоб Господи. Будьте, самое главное, будьте живы. Это страшно, когда дети умирают.
Спасибо.
Так что держитесь, мы с вами.
Будете тут?
Будете тут. Вы тут будете?
Да. English. Speak English. Oh, yeah. Французский. Французский. Да, французский. American. Да.
That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support my channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.